Have you ever been in the middle of a conversation, maybe at work, maybe hanging out with friends, or even trying to order a simple coffee, and right before you open your mouth, your brain hits a complete wall? Someone asks you a question. You understand it instantly, but the moment you try to respond, your brain shifts into overdrive. Translate. Find the exact word. Check the grammar rules from that textbook you read 3 years ago. Translate back. And by the time you finally figure out how to say what you want to say, the moment has passed. The conversation has already moved on. You look hesitant, you feel exhausted, and inside your head a voice whispers, "Why am I still struggling with this?" If this sounds like you, I want you to take a deep breath and listen very closely to what I'm about to say. You are not bad at English. Let me repeat that. Your vocabulary is fine. Your grammar knowledge is probably better than half of the native speakers walking down the street. Your problem is not that you lack knowledge. Your problem is that you are running a heavy, outdated software program in your brain called mental translation. Today, we are diving deep into a comprehensive 50-minute masterclass. We are going to break down why translating every single sentence in your head is actively destroying your fluency, how it creates invisible chains around your confidence, and most importantly, we are going to walk through a complete blueprint to rewire your brain to start thinking directly in English. Grab a notebook, grab your favorite drink, and settle in. This is going to change how you speak forever. The anatomy of the trap. Why translation kills fluency. Let's look at what actually happens inside your brain when you communicate. When a native speaker speaks, or when someone who has achieved true fluency listens, the process looks like a straight line. Concept right arrow output. You have an idea in your head, and your mouth instantly shapes the words to express that idea. It is lightning fast. It bypasses logic gates and goes straight to expression. Now, look at what you are forced to do when you are stuck in the translation trap. The process looks like an obstacle course. Concept in native language. Right arrow, stop, right arrow. Search mental dictionary. A right arrow, retrieve words. Right arrow, apply native grammar rules. Right arrow, translate to English. Right arrow, double-check accuracy in right arrow physical output. That is a 6-step process happening in a fraction of a second. Is it any wonder your brain feels tired after 10 minutes of casual conversation? Is it any wonder you stutter, pause, and say or over and over again? You aren't hesitating because you don't know the language. You are hesitating because your brain is a computer processor, overheating from running too many background applications at the same time. The 3 hidden damages of translation. 1. The rhythm killer. Human language is musical. It has cadence, stress, rhythm, and flow. When you translate word for word, your speech becomes robotic and choppy. You speak in mechanical bursts because you are building sentences like a bricklayer instead of painting pictures. With your voice like an artist. 2. The context mismatch. Languages do not map onto each other one-to-one. Idioms. Emotional nuances and cultural expressions do not translate literally. When you force your native language's idioms directly into English, you end up saying things that sound completely unnatural or confusing to listeners, even if the grammar is technically correct. 3. The confidence destroyer. Every single time you freeze while translating, your brain registers a micro failure. Over months and years, these micro-failures accumulate into a deep-seated belief. I am awkward in English. I can't express my true personality. That is the most tragic part of this trap. It doesn't just slow down your words. It hides the brilliant, funny, intelligent person you actually are behind a wall of hesitation. The story of Tariq, from the translation trap to freedom. To truly understand how to escape this, I want to tell you a story. Meet Tariq. Tariq was an absolute master of English grammar on paper. If you handed him a test with multiple choice questions, fill in the blanks or complex syntax rules, he would score 95% every single time. He had studied English for over 6 years through textbooks, apps, and formal classes. Professionally, Tariq was brilliant. He worked as a senior data analyst for an international logistics firm. He knew his numbers inside and out. But there was one part of his job that filled him with absolute dread. The weekly global Zoom meeting. Every Thursday at 4 p.m., managers from London, New York, and Dubai would log into a massive video conference. And every Thursday, Tariq would sit in front of his webcam with his heart pounding against his ribs. Tariq's desk was a battlefield of preparation. He didn't just have his spreadsheet open. He had a physical notebook covered in handwritten sentences. Before every meeting, he would spend 3 hours writing down every single thing he thought he might need to say. He wanted to report that shipping delays had increased by 4% due to weather conditions. He wouldn't just think shipping is delayed. No, his brain would instantly kick into translation mode. He would write it in his native language first. Maulana shipping mi rukavat aayi hai. Then he would translate it mentally. The shipment has faced an obstacle. Then he would check if obstacle was the right word or if disruption sounded more professional. Then he would rehearse it 10 times in his head to make sure his pronunciation was flawless. Can you imagine living your life like that? Trying to hold a live, dynamic conversation while running a mental translation factory in real time? For months, Tariq survived this way. He stayed quiet for 90% of the meetings, only speaking when someone specifically asked him a direct question. And even then, he would give short, clipped answers. Yes, everything is on track. Or, I will check and email you. He thought he was being cautious. He thought he was protecting himself from making mistakes. Until the Thursday that changed everything. It was a high-stakes review meeting. The regional director, a sharp, energetic woman named Sarah, was grilling the team on a major supply chain failure in the European sector. Millions of dollars were on the line. Suddenly, Sarah looked directly at the screen and called out, "Tariq, your regional data shows a massive anomaly in the transit logs for Tuesday. Walk us through what happened. We need your insight right now." Panic, absolute cold panic flooded Tariq's veins. There was no time to write notes. There was no time to draft a script. The floor was his right now, in front of 30 senior executives. Tariq opened his mouth. His brain frantically tried to grab the native thoughts and translate them into English sentences. The truck, the vehicle was not, because the weather was bad. So the delivery system was, postponed. It sounded stiff. It sounded hesitant. Worst of all, it didn't capture the actual complexity of what had happened. He had discovered a brilliant routing loophole that saved the company $50,000, but his translated English made it sound like a simple amateur mistake. Sarah frowned, leaning toward her camera. Tariq, are you saying the cargo was lost, or did we reroute it successfully? Your phrasing is confusing me. Tariq froze. His face burned hot. He stuttered out a weak response, fumbled for words, and eventually mumbled, I will send a detailed report via email later. Sarah sighed, clearly disappointed, and moved on to the next person. That evening, Tariq sat at his desk long after everyone else had logged off. The office was dead silent. He looked at his notebook filled with rehearsed translations, closed it, and threw it across the room. He buried his face in his hands. I've studied for 6 years, he whispered to the empty room. Why do I still feel like a child when I try to speak? That night, Tariq didn't study grammar. He didn't open a dictionary. Instead, he went online and happened to stumble upon a deep dive workshop on language acquisition. And there, a veteran language coach said something that shattered Tariq's entire worldview. Language is not a math puzzle. Language is a physical habit, a sensory ecosystem. You will never speak fluently as long as you keep using your native language as a middleman. Tariq realized the brutal truth. His problem wasn't that his English was weak. His problem was that his brain was exhausted from acting as a 24/7 translator between two languages. He wasn't living in English. He was just visiting it as a tourist using a phrasebook. That night, Tariq made a radical decision. He threw away his translation notebooks. He decided that starting the very next morning, he was going to stop translating, even if it meant making mistakes, even if it meant sounding foolish at first. The breakthrough and the lessons learned. The next 2 weeks were terrifying for Tariq. When he tried to speak without translating, his sentences weren't always grammatically pristine. Sometimes he used a simpler word instead of a sophisticated one. Sometimes he paused for a second to find a concept instead of a word. But something miraculous happened. Because he stopped running the translation software in his head, his speed doubled. Because he stopped searching for perfect grammar, his rhythm smoothed out. And most importantly, when people spoke to him, he started responding to the meaning of their words directly. Rather than converting their English words into his native language, formulating a native response and translating it back. 3 weeks after his disaster in the meeting, another Thursday global sync rolled around. Sarah brought up a new logistics hurdle. Tensions were high. And right in the middle of the discussion, Tariq saw a flaw in the proposed timeline that nobody else noticed. In the old days, panic would have set in. He would have started scribbling translations. Instead, Tariq closed his eyes for a split second, anchored himself in the raw concept of the problem, unmuted his microphone, and spoke. Hold on, everyone. If we push the departure window by 2 hours to accommodate the weather, we're actually going to miss the regional customs clearance window in Frankfurt. We need to split the cargo into 2 smaller batches instead. It keeps us compliant and saves us the delay. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't full of overly complex vocabulary, but it was instantaneous, razor sharp, completely natural, and delivered with absolute authority. The meeting went silent for a second. Then Sarah smiled and nodded on camera. Brilliant catch, Tariq. Let's do that. Tariq leaned back in his chair. He didn't feel exhausted. For the first time in 6 years, he hadn't spoken English. He had just spoken. What can we learn from Tariq's journey? Let's extract the core lessons from Tariq's transformation so you can apply them starting today. Lesson 1. Fluency is about concepts, not words. When you look at an apple, do you think the word apple in your native language? Translate it into English and then say apple? No, your brain looks at the physical object and immediately associates it with the concept of the fruit. You must train your brain to attach English words directly to concepts and images, skipping your native language entirely. Lesson 2, perfectionism, is the enemy of speed. Tariq was paralyzed because he wanted every sentence to be grammatically bulletproof. Native speakers do not speak in bulletproof grammar. They speak in communicative chunks. Stop aiming for perfection. Aim for connection. Lesson 3, the discomfort zone is where growth lives. The reason most people keep translating is because it feels safe. Translating acts as a security blanket. Dropping the blanket feels naked and scary at first, just like it did for Tariq during those first 2 weeks. But true freedom only begins the moment you let go of the safety net. Practical blueprint: how to keep yourself away from translations. So how do you actually do this? How do you stop your brain from defaulting to translation? You cannot just tell yourself, stop translating. You need a physical system. Here is your 4-step blueprint to permanently eliminate mental translation from your daily routine. The monolingual anchor technique. When you study vocabulary, never write your native language next to an English word. If you are learning the word exhausted, do not write the translation in your native language. Instead, write a simple English definition or draw a picture of a person sleeping at a desk. Or write a sentence: I ran 10 miles and now I am exhausted. Force your brain to understand English through English. Use an English to English learner's dictionary from now on. 2. Environmental immersion and narration. Start narrating your day out loud, but restrict yourself strictly to simple English phrases without translating your thoughts. When you wake up in the morning, do not think in your native language, Mujhe abhi chai banani hai. I need to make tea right now. Force your internal monologue to say directly, time to make coffee. Water is boiling. Grab the mug. At first, your brain will rebel. It will feel awkward and artificial. Do it anyway. Treat your mind like a muscle that needs to be retrained away from its old habit. 3. The chunking method. Over word-by-word construction. Stop learning individual words and start memorizing conversational blocks. Instead of learning the word opinion and trying to build a sentence around it, learn the entire functional chunk. From my perspective, or the way I see it is, when you learn phrases as single, unbreakable blocks of sound and meaning, your brain doesn't have time to translate word by word because the phrase is already pre-assembled in your memory. 4. The 5-second rule for live speaking. When you are in a conversation, give yourself a strict rule. You are not allowed to edit your sentences before you speak. Say the first clear, simple thing that comes to your mind in English. If it's grammatically imperfect, who cares? Communication is about transfer of meaning, not winning a grammar competition. The more you allow yourself to speak imperfectly without translating, the faster your brain builds the neural pathways for instant fluency. Conclusion. Let's bring it all home. Tariq didn't become fluent because he bought a magic textbook. He became fluent because he stopped letting his native language act as a bodyguard for his confidence. He stepped out from behind the translation safety net, embraced the discomfort of imperfection, and finally allowed his real voice to be heard. You have that exact same voice inside of you right now. It is smart, it is expressive, and it is waiting to get out. But it cannot breathe as long as you keep locking it behind the heavy doors of mental translation. Drop the mental dictionary. Stop translating every single sentence. Trust your instincts. Embrace simple communication. And watch how fast your English transforms. Call to action. If this masterclass resonated with you, if you felt like Tariq's story was your own story, I want you to take 2 quick actions right now. Leave a comment below. Tell me the exact situation where you catch yourself translating the most. Is it at work, during casual chats, or when you're alone trying to form thoughts? Let's talk about it in the comments. I read and reply to as many as I can. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. We break down deep dive, psychological and practical, fluency strategies like this every single week here on the channel. Thank you for spending this time with me today. You've got this. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and I'll see you in the next masterclass.